decision day, waiting to see the meter running. And yep, here we are. People are joining the stream. So let's just get into
people are freaking out.
Let's
relax,
just get into
everybody.
Let's get into everything. First, we'll tell you about Manscaped. Got to get that stuff. 20% off, free shipping, code Garden. Garden20 at manscaped.com. That's our sponsor for this show. All Garden reports this week, brought to you by Manscaped. But the big news is, and now we know it. Now we know it. Gordon gone. He's gone.
Gordo Gonzo.
There it is. Opts out of the final year of his deal, becomes a free agent, and now there's a massive freak out on Twitter. But first, we're going to get into it.
I'm surprised you're saying that, John.
What?
That he's gone. I mean, you've been big on that. Knicks
I'm
are
not.
smoke.
I'm going to lay it out for everybody right now. I'm not saying that. Gordon Hayward opts out, okay? Everybody assumes that means Gordon Hayward's going to leave and he's going to go sign elsewhere. It's not necessarily the case. Realistically, there are still several options on the table, which includes an extension with the Celtics, which was always in play, and possibly is something that they're talking about, and also a sign and trade to a preferred destination. What this does is this opens up the possibility that tomorrow when free agency begins, Gordon Hayward can leave and go sign somewhere else. It's something he couldn't do prior to today. So the only thing that's changed is he could sign somewhere else tomorrow. If that was the case, or that was what he wanted to do, we've talked about this from the beginning. He could have opted out on Tuesday, not done an extension, known that he was going to sign in Atlanta or New York and been happy with that. Obviously, he wants something else, and that's either to have the Celtics come to the table with a better offer than they were offering to extend him, or to get a sign and trade to a preferred destination. So it appears options A and B for Hayward, if those in fact are the options, are still in play. I still think the distant option is the Knicks or Hawks, which if he wanted to, could have had it like that and didn't have to do any of this. And we've argued about it the last couple of days that I think a little of this is fabricated by the Hayward camp, throwing out these smoke signals here to get the Celtics a little bit panicky. It was Atlanta.
And this is the latest in the line of that stuff.
We didn't bite on Atlanta yesterday, and then the New York thing comes out today. I believe that those are planted stories. Not only is New York interested, they've been interested all week, according to the report.
Clearing cap space.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Jimmy, start with you, and let's get our initial reactions here.
Well, initial reaction is just, I think, a little bit of disappointment, a little bit of frustration. I know a lot of Celtics fans, and even a lot of my friends have texted me like, "What the hell just happened? Like, what can we expect to see here?" I think we still are almost just as clueless as we were yesterday with how this ends up because of all the situations you just mentioned, John. I mean, is there a benefit to re-signing Gordon Hayward and bringing back the band, so to speak? Yeah, I think there is, based on what we've seen when he is healthy. But if it's over here in Boston with Gordon Hayward and I haven't heard that and I don't know who has, then the Celtics are going to try to exhaust all their options. Now, I saw Mark Stein tweet that the Indiana Pacers were apparently talking about being involved via trade, so maybe that option is still there. But Gordon Hayward's, this is free agency. It's not his first free agency. He knows what to expect tomorrow when the clock hits, and I'm sure he'll take all the calls, and his agent will take all the calls, and Danny Ainge will be very involved too with what's going on. Because listen, the last thing you want is for the Celtics to end up with absolutely zero out of this. Just turns into a 3-year contract for Gordon Hayward, all 3 years of which were, essentially waste of season. I mean, the third year was the best year, but even injuries came into play there too. So, I mean, it amounted pretty tough.
To nothing, because when you need it's not to nothing, because he wasn't available at the end of the season, gotten them into the finals. Again, we're not going to blame people for injuries, but ultimately you got nothing out of Gordon Hayward.
Nothing.
If you leave.
I mean,
nothing.
It's going to go down as one of the most failed.
Nothing. You got nothing.
Trades.
I can't disagree with that more. The Celtics were the 4 seed in the East. No,
we're not playing for that, Bobby. That's Loserville.
Playing for you're playing for division titles, Bob. Or are you playing for?
People were talking about the Celtics not even making the playoffs last year.
Loserville. Not playing for that. This was a super team, and
super team. Do you remember the? Do you remember the expectations going into last year?
People were like, "Oh, maybe prior to that,
7 or 8 years."
You remember a year prior to that?
That's
Kyrie and Hayward.
That year was a loss.
Be crazy,
2020 was. He was a ginormous reason the team was so successful.
It doesn't matter if they were a tick, if they survived one extra round beyond what experts thought they were going to get this year. It's
no, expectations were much lower.
Zero. You get zero out of Hayward.
I just don't get what it is about this guy. I think it's the fact that he came in with these expectations that he was going to be the front man. The $34 million is attached to his name. What happened. It's a sunk cost, and he still finds a new role on this team and becomes great, becomes the biggest edge, and becomes the reason that they were a true championship contender last year.
Yeah, it's
Bobby, you can't. All those things are true, but also true. It just didn't go the way anybody wanted it to go.
That's true, but it still went pretty good last year.
It didn't go. But it could, but when it mattered most, did it go pretty good?
He got hurt. Players get hurt.
I know.
None of it matters. It doesn't matter. It's not. We're not blaming Gordon. See, Bobby, we're having two different conversations. All the crap that Gordon got for not living up to expectations in the $30 million and not being a superstar or taking a long time to come off that injury. That's one bucket. The other bucket is at the end of the day, dollars to donuts. What you're left with is nothing. No money, no flexibility, nothing to show for it other than getting a little bit farther than people thought they were going to get last year. Big freaking deal, okay? It's not his fault he sprained his ankle at the end. And if he didn't, right now, we could be talking about the Celtics made it all the way to the finals. They didn't. So the end result of what you got, the net result off of Gordon is zero. Zero. If he leaves.
If he leaves, and the only reason that'll be the case if he leaves is because the Celtics are making a ginormous mistake in not paying one of what I believe is one of the 30, 35 best players in the NBA. This guy is one of the best wings in the league when he's healthy, when he's rolling. He just had the most efficient. He just had the most efficient season a player's ever had at his usage rate. He's drilling threes for them. He's playmaking. This guy's invaluable. And if the Celtics look at this and don't pay his market price, what are you doing? People should be mad at the Celtics right now.
What did we say about Al Horford last year? Okay, here's the irony of this whole thing. Okay, Danny Ainge, we're killing Hayward for not living up to his $30 million salary, and now we're going to kill Danny for not paying him $30 million more. I mean, which way is it here? We've got to figure out what it is we think of Gordon Hayward. Are you giving him $30-something million a year for the next 4 years, guaranteed at 31 years old, when he hasn't stayed healthy once? If you do that now, Bobby, that 2 years from now, we could be looking and saying, what the hell was Ainge doing here?
Well, what are we looking at now?
You got to take losses. And the loss you got to take with Hayward here is you got to trade him for cents on the dollar. You sign and trade to his preferred destination. Doesn't matter that we hate Miles Turner.
I don't.
And you just live with him. You live with less. You took a loss. So be it.
I'm down for that situation here, but if we're going in the direction of just losing him outright or getting a trade player exception back, this is a disaster. And we're looking at 2 prime years of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, at the very least, I would say, just lost. And that's a disaster. You had a situation here where you had 4 all-star players together, a core ready to win a championship now, and it doesn't feel like they're prioritizing this moment. So like you can do your plan, John. Yeah, you can move
on. You move on. You cut your losses at this point.
But guess what you're risking?
You don't cut your losses by overpaying him because you think you're desperate, because you're trying to hang on for one more year of Tatum and Brown. You cut your losses. You make a sign and trade. You go get somebody you don't love, so you don't leave with zero, because that's what they have if he walks. Zero. So make
I agree with that.
Trade and move on with it.
I agree with that.
I
think your first priority is to try to get a deal done.
Look at Al Horford 1 year into it. Oh, geez, we couldn't
Al
have paid
Horford
that.
And Hayward are two much different players.
I know, but he's gone. I mean, 1 year later, the team that signed him to that deal that the Celtics wouldn't sign him to was like, holy shit, I got to get rid of this guy. So, I mean, this is the risk by overpaying. You have to stick to your guns and pay people what you think they're worth, not get desperate.
All right,
oh, my.
the Celtics didn't do that with Horford. They rallied at the last second and try to make every move possible to pay him, keep him, and match that Philadelphia offer. So that's not what they're doing here. I still believe they're trying to keep Hayward. It's just, what's the dollar price going to be? He's using leverage, as you say, with legitimate interest from the Knicks and Hawks. The Celtics are trying to keep this at a fair price because they want him, but not at something like 130 million like with the Horford situation. And then there's other teams out here that want him, but also are trying to limit that price tag.
And I'm not comparing the players. I'm comparing the situation, which is the Celtics have assigned a value to Hayward, and that's what it is. And they assigned a value to Horford, and that's what worked for them. It's not the same player, and the people on the stream here who can't understand a nuanced argument, that's not what it is. What I'm saying is you're not going to all of a sudden think, this is what he's worth to me, and then double that because you're desperate. If it gets to that, you have no choice but to sign and trade, and that's what it is. What we're saying is if they let him walk because Danny won't take a loss on a deal, that's where they're gonna. That's the big mistake.
And they're not going to do that. At the very least, they're going to get an exception here. He is not going to leave for nothing. And the reason is because the Knicks, Hawks, they can, rather than having the same salary every year, front load this a little bit where they're going to be taking player reductions and leave less money on the back end of this deal. So there is a minor incentive for the Hawks, Knicks, teams that he can go to outright to do a sign and trade for a player exception at the very least. Now,
oh my God.
Again,
I think Jimmy died.
I'm not gonna be thrilled if it's just an exception. Like, you know,
the exception sucks. $9-10 million sucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's a price that works for you if the Celtics are gonna re-sign Hayward? What's a number?
I've said from the very beginning they should sign him to a 3-year, $70 million deal.
Okay, Hayward, we just went over this. Hayward is far better player than Al Horford, younger, more important,
different market,
more
though.
Versatile. And Al wouldn't take that. So you think Hayward is 3 years younger? He's going to take that deal?
So let me, and now
that's not what he's looking for.
Now we're on opposite sides, John. I don't think the Hawks and Knicks are going 130. This is the pandemic. This is BRI's down 30%. There's real money at play here. I mean, James Dolan's probably losing money out of the pockets right now. He's not giving 130 to Hayward. We're talking about somewhere between 60 and 80 million dollars here. We're cutting hairs. Like this isn't going to keep skyrocketing to the highest level. And you know why we're pushing this back 2 days now? Because there's not a deal there that Hayward likes. He's still searching on three different fronts.
Yes.
He's still searching on three different fronts.
I do not believe we are in agreement on that, Bobby. I think Atlanta and New York is bullshit smokescreen floated by the Hayward camp. If he wanted it, he would have opted out if the money was there and the destination was there.
I think they're legit suitors.
He's trying to juke his way to a preferred destination or get the Celtics to re-up. And so he's using his leverage here.
So
he should.
I'm a little different than that. I think they're legitimate suitors, but they have a maximum price they're willing to go to. It's probably above Boston's right now, but I don't think it's a point Boston can't get over.
What have we learned about free agency, Bobby? Okay, it's for real, though. I mean, this is the thing. Everybody has, again, I'm going to use the Al Horford comp. Everybody has a dollar value of what they think some team would want to pay somebody. And it's always way higher than that, okay? Always. Way higher. We're always wrong. The market is set by one team, and you have one desperate franchise like Atlanta, for example, that isn't able to lure big name, big ticket free agents there very often. They get one shot at it. They overpay because at least you have the asset. You know, you got to do something with that money. So you use it. So it takes one team. I wouldn't be stunned if they did drop that. I just don't think Hayward really wants to go there. I think he's floating the interest because he wants to be, because again, logically, he would have just opted out and gone his preferred choice to go to Atlanta or to New York.
Right.
That would
he would have.
No, it's not.
What about the luxury tax?
The luxury
going to re-sign Hayward. I mean, you're talking 60 million or whatnot. I mean, it's going to be way more for Boston if they're the ones locking him up.
And they're saying it here. This is interesting too. New York, Fred VanVleet, you know, is somebody that they're talking about. You've heard Atlanta, a bunch of different people. There is a situation where Gordon is left out in the wilderness with those teams sign other people without a deal. So you don't really know. I mean, it could be a risk for him too. It is interesting.
I mean, you're talking about, Bob, you're talking about COVID and all that stuff. I mean, teams are even less wanting to go into that luxury tax scenario right now because of the income that they're not making typically. I mean, so I think that is part of the Celtics thinking too here.
So see, there's no deal that they can get to that keeps them below the tax. You either keep Hayward with the tax or lose him and not pay it. I don't think that's going to be the holding up point between wanting to keep him and getting rid of him here. Now, I do think the bigger concern here that we've talked about multiple times on this show is splitting him up into medium-sized salaries, which still makes Indiana that desirable destination for him.
Yeah. What we have to point out too, and in fairness to Gordon, because we're not talking about it enough right now, there's a lot of vitriol here on the chat and on Twitter, and I get it, because the feeling is we've been spurned again. Kyrie did it, Al did it, now the vibe is Hayward did it. What we don't know is Hayward's number one intention right now very well could be an opt-out re-sign with the Celtics, and that's always been the plan, and it's by far his number one priority. They just don't have it figured out yet. That could be it. They could be doing the Belichick thing, letting him test his market a little bit, see what's out there, and say, okay, we'll get you close to that.
I mean, yeah, it's a player option.
Possible that the whole thing is really him actually. That right now they're basically laughing at people like us screaming about him leaving when
this is an intense negotiation.
Yeah,
and
his plan very well could be let's make this work, and he might want this more than anything else, and wants to stay. I'm not going to call it a bad guy, but the person who might be pushing harder might be Danny here. And so we have to you got to entertain that possibility as well.
It is, but if he dominated for 3 years in Boston in another world, let's say, I mean, he probably opts out in the same way he did now, just looking for a better deal. Are fans going to have the same reaction? I think there's a lot of animosity because of the way those 3 years have gone, and this is just kind of piling it on.
Yeah.
But I mean, players put player options into their contracts all the time, and they use them very often for this exact reason.
Look what goes around now. Now that he has the chance to leave outright and leave them stranded, everybody's freaking out. When 2 weeks ago it was dump him for nothing, get rid of him, he's useless. I mean, the pile-on with him has been ridiculous over these last 3 years. And what does it tell you that now that he has the chance to leave, people are concerned? This guy was a real valuable piece for this team for many years, and they're gonna only realize that when he's gone.
Oh, give me a break.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far.
He could have been, Bobby, but it's
Celtics
not.
Fans aren't that.
Hayward's
stupid.
tenure is going to be remembered for a grisly injury, a year plus of not even being close to right, and then not being ready in the playoffs. In order, 1, 2, 3. That's it. Nothing else. No one's going to remember. No one's going to remember the beginning of this year when he was playing close to an all-star level. That's not part of the resume. That's all it is.
Because you just get to pick and choose.
That's
true.
You brought him here not to play well in friggin' November and December 1 year. You brought him here to take you to another level. It didn't happen. This is the reality. That's his legacy here. Grizzly injury, couldn't stay healthy, wasn't there when he needed him, never got him over the top, left. We can add that. That's the only other thing that gets to this resume. Unless he resigns, and then we see what we go. And for God's sake, maybe plays one freaking healthy year so we can actually see how good he is at basketball and how valuable he could be to this team. Because we've only seen it ever for 2 months at a time.
Every time the going got rough, though, it was wait till Hayward comes back. You're down 3-1 in that Miami series. Oh, Hayward's coming back. There's the hope. He wins them a game there, and he struggles the rest of the way coming back 2 weeks early from that injury. But guess what? Everybody was saying he was going to leave the bubble and go be at the birth of his child. Everyone was freaking out waiting for that, and he didn't. He took a stand. He got in there and played 2 weeks later.
And what, though? And what? That's commendable. It doesn't change his his story here, which was
it's not
whether
personal.
It's not his. You go ahead, Jimmy.
No, it's nothing personal. That's just how it worked. It ended up. It's shitty for him. It's shitty for the Celtics. It's shitty for Celtics fans. But Bobby, you have to understand people aren't breaking down the game film and seeing what Gordon Hayward did well when he was healthy. I mean, that's something that like you're capable of doing, and you know a lot of basketball journalists are capable of doing. But like the average fan, they want to know, what have you done for me lately? Why aren't you out there playing? The best ability is availability, all those things.
But what
And
about
Gordon
the
Hayward,
possibility of him being healthy going forward?
That would be great. And now
Sure.
the question is,
that is a
what's
possibility,
the price
I
tag?
guess.
If we knew numbers, we could make this argument right now. I could put it out a hypothetical here. If it's 3-75 and the Celtics are balking at that, I think that would be a mistake. If Hayward's looking for 4 and 120, you've got to discuss.
I think
He must know something.
I think
he must know something.
And we thought the same thing. We thought, so you know that's where we are. You know that was basically, again, to use Horford as an example, that was roughly the difference. We're talking 3-60 for Al, and he gets this monster deal, and you're like, wow, those weren't the numbers we're talking about. We don't know what Hayward wants there. But if he's going to decline 1-34, that's got to mean he thinks he's getting close to 25 to 30 per year.